Hi, my name is Luke Bonner. I am the Senior Economic Development Advisor for the City of Sterling Heights. Thank you for joining us on Innovating Business, and thank you for those that are listening in on the podcast. Today we are joined by Stephen Couchman, President and CEO of STEAMBOX Educational Learning Services. Probably the coolest guy I think we have in the city right now with the amount of technology that Stephen is working on here at Velocity, the Velocity Collaboration Center. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I said some of the coolest stuff in the city so far because as the more and more that we talk about the kind of technology that you're using for educational purposes, it's very cutting edge and things that you typically are starting to see in the marketplace a little bit, but it's almost taking over in everything we do, and that's augmented reality. So tell us about STEAMBOX, which is your passion, and tell us about the technology that you're integrating into STEAMBOX and how that's coming together for you.
Certainly. STEAMBOX actually started at a trade show. We were watching a bunch of students over at a show called MDEX over in Warren, and they were running around looking, where's the robots, where's the robots, where's the robots? And I go, man, I wish we could get other market verticals as kind of rabid fan base as First Robotics is. So I'm just talking with a buddy of mine I worked with at the time, and he go, you know, what we ought to do is we ought to drop these little virtualized servers in high school, call them a STEAMBOX, and on that would be preloaded an educational curriculum for virtual and augmented reality, and maybe some artificial intelligence and machine learning work. And the kids could actually learn right from there through guided tutorials and then participate in group projects all over the internet. And he goes, you just came up with another business idea, didn't you? And actually, it's been about a year now. We've been incubating this here at Velocity, and we're taking this into high schools primarily, like 11th and 12th graders. And what we're doing is we're creating a kind of minimally viable candidate student for a CGI employee working at a house that does VR or augmented reality. And so that they can, and it's using same game engines and things like that you would, actually create games on, Unity and Unreal. And we're actually teaching the kids a workflow so that they can create their own applications. And then actually, when they kind of graduate from our program, we're going to be offering up, when we get it approved, a Department of Labor certified apprenticeship that they'll be able to go into once they graduate.
So what kind of jobs typically with students with this certification, once you get through that process, what kind of jobs are they going to be seeking and have available to them once they get through that process?
They're going to be able to do anything from like visualization type CGI and actually like modeling cars and things like that for Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, any of the big three or any of the OEMs. They're going to be creating, the core is game development technically, so they'll be able to create games and things like that, so they'll be working at game studios, things like that. They're going to be learning some design. And then kind of the most exciting thing for me personally is that they're going to be learning kind of the basics of doing like augmented reality training manuals. Especially in the defense space, the government's putting a lot of money into that, where a soldier isn't going to go, okay, Sergeant, what do I do here? They're going to go, hey, put on these goggles, and it will superimpose a picture over the tire, and you'll learn how to change the tire virtually.
So this is, and I'll call you this for the first time, but you're working on like Tony Stark type stuff, right?
Yes, we are.
You were talking a little bit earlier before we went on about some new technology that literally is going to allow people to start moving things in almost a live hologram type of fashion, where it is at some point it is kind of like you're in the Iron Man suit and you're moving stuff around.
The latest Microsoft HoloLens that was just announced back about 2 weeks ago actually has some really complicated gestural things where you can actually pick things out of midair and toss them somewhere, or you can slide things or press buttons and things like that. And it's all literally, in your field of vision. You're just doing it virtually as opposed to physically pushing the button or throwing an object.
So where do you think right now in terms of education, where is that gap? What are kids learning today in STEM? Now, you are STEAM, right? You might want to explain what STEAM is versus STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But where is that gap, and why is STEAM going to fill that gap?
I think that my humble opinion is we've gotten kind of away from engaging kids with what they want to learn and how they want to learn. Every other facet of their life, they're engaging something. They're engaging their phones, they're engaging their computers, they're engaging their friends. But at school, you're being told and taught, which I understand has value. There's core subjects that you got to kind of come away with. You got to know how to balance a checkbook. You got to know how to, conduct yourself as a human being. But when it comes to that immersion, I think a kid's going to get way more out of watching virtual George Washington walk into the classroom and talk to them about how things were back in 1776, as opposed to reading the book and looking at some pictures about George Washington and what they did.
Right.
I think it's going to be a lot more, they're going to retain a lot more because it's actually a virtual person talking to them, or even learning more abstract concepts like mathematics. How cool would it be if you said, okay, you're learning algebra and you got a box that says X times Y equals this, and you could actually drag boxes and show your work. So it's actually a little bit, that motion actually puts it into a memory.
It's really hands-on learning.
Correct.
But your hands really aren't on anything.
Correct.
Right? You're putting pieces together, you're putting puzzles together.
And
almost.
it'll be collaborative, so that the whole class can participate and look at these different things from different angles. And I mean, to see a solar system at scale and things like that, some of the first HoloLens stuff I looked at was just so impressive, because you don't realize the vastness of the solar system until you really see a representation of it that's orbiting and moving and that kind of thing.
Right. So STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Correct.
Correct. So long term, from an entrepreneurial perspective, when students have access to this kind of technology from a learning engagement process, what do you think that will do in terms of piquing students' interest to become more entrepreneurial in their ventures as they grow older, or even younger?
Another one of the things that I'm really trying to accomplish with STEAMBOX, as well as I go to high schools and talk to kids all the time, is kind of almost provoking them into interest. And a lot of that comes with experience. So kids don't have, it's like, if I want to be an artist, well, I got to go here, 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 and here to go get paints, and then I got to come back here and learn something about painting else. I want to make that right out in front. So a lot of the education you get through STEAMBOX is direct online. You can collaborate with friends in an informal thing, through a meetup or whatever the case is. But I think it's just being able to afford that experience to a kid and say, hey, do you want to be part of something bigger and learn with a bunch of people that are like-minded and want to learn with you? I think that's got a lot of power behind it.
Right. STEAMBOX is a 501c3 nonprofit, correct?
Correct.
Which it allows for a lot of flexibility in terms of who you collaborate with. So tell us who your partners are going to be, both probably on a technology side, but also on a learning side, assuming it's probably endless. But what are your focus at? Where will your focus be in terms of partners?
So at its core, this is a workforce development project. I mean, I love the fact that it's educational and it's kind of wrapped around it as education, but it's workforce development, because all these, we talk about how your car's driver's, your car's auto manual is going to actually be virtualized, and you're going to have an augmented reality thing if you want to change your tires or change your oil or how to set your clock or whatever the case is. There's going to be a big, and right now there's like, there's no jobs in AR and that kind of stuff, but it's looking forward those 5-10 years when everything is going to be some sort of augmentation. We're going to need those workers. So what we're doing is, we're working with like the Workforce Intelligence Network here locally. They support the community colleges. We've talked to a ton of community colleges in this area about this subject. We've talked to all the employers who actually, they're the people who need the talent. So we actually go to them on a regular basis and say, what's new? What do you need going forward? Should we be teaching this or that or the other? And that our curriculum flexes based on their workforce needs, not on like, we're just going to learn .NET and send you out to the wolves. We actually want to have a home for these people once they come through our program.
.NET is a common programming language for coding, back end of software, that sort of thing. When it comes to manufacturing, so there is clearly a gamut of skill sets now in manufacturing that is anything from computer engineering, software engineering, electrical, design, mechanical, and then the actual physical trades required to build something.
Yes.
So have you seen, or do you think that as kids get more interested in augmented reality, computer gaming, that sort of thing, do you think that will evolve also maybe into a new love or passion for making stuff, making the hard product?
Absolutely. Right now, one of the gentlemen we work with, Jeremy Eckhouse, and then his partner, David Pollack, they work really heavily in AR, and they're actually working on a system for doing knowledge transfer technically. That's one of the applications that they're working on. And so what they're doing is they're taking these legacy things, like for example, Ford, Chrysler, General Motors have all this legacy information, and people might be retiring from their shops, and that knowledge, that 30, 40 years of knowledge that's in that person's head vanishes. So what they're trying to do is work with these folks so there is a knowledge transfer of how you work this machine properly, how you do this properly, and I have a feeling that that training for those manufacturing jobs is really going to start taking off, because now it seems that it's losing its stigma as not a cool thing to do.
Right.
By implementing that technology, and honestly, most manufacturing jobs are very technology based now. I think that it'll kind of pivot a little bit and make those jobs a lot more attractive to kids coming out of high school.
Right. Yeah, we last year we had something called Manufacturers Engage, which we actually plan on having again this year.
Okay.
But during that program, we had manufacturers with high school students, and just basically asked them, and we convened a conversation to let them talk back and forth to each other about manufacturers. What are we looking for in kids? What do we really want out of a career? And it was pretty interesting to see kids taking sort of that design approach, right? That engineering approach, and then based on an internship, they got to work with their hands on something. Then all of a sudden, their outlook was completely different. I want to work on machines now versus what I thought of just plain engineering. Another question for you. So with the amount of technology that you're pulling in and you're integrating into your practicum and training programs and that sort of thing, and with kids in high school, community college, and maybe even employees of different companies around town, do you see that there's a possibility that you may create new companies within STEAMBOX that could be maybe spun out to do other things?
As these new technologies go forward and improve, and software gets to the point where it's becoming almost modular, like bolt-on. We were working on a project with a software company, or a software called ARMA, that does military kind of simulations. Okay, the Army uses it and all this kind of stuff, and you can write various plugins for that. I think that as they're learning these things, and we expose them to these different employers and these different people from, say, the government, and we've got Ground Vehicle Systems Center right up the street here that's working on some great artificial intelligence stuff. I think that there's going to be a lot of spin-offs for those people that do catch that entrepreneurial bug, or even once we kind of get out there to the high schools and do this, we want to offer this training to even individuals that maybe got technology displaced in the workforce. We've talked to Michigan Works about it, things like that, where maybe they send, a company sends somebody here, gets the training, and they start like a company within a company, like an innovation center of sorts, where they can start doing innovations for their company that they work for. And I think that's, it just kind of spawns off more and more with each passing month that goes by.
Right. So you as an individual, you're a resident of the city of Sterling Heights.
I am.
What other things are you, Stephen Couchman, involved in community, from a community
I'm actually on
perspective?
the Arts Council with Gene Shabath and all the gang over there. It's been fantastic talking about new projects going up around town. I actually am taking on a project right now we're going to digitize all of the artwork in Sterling Heights and make it available in 3D so that people can experience it just about anywhere.
That's pretty cool. I'm going to pivot real quick. LivePicture.
Yes.
Another company that you own.
Yes.
Talk to us about LivePicture, which we're standing in front of one of your products.
This is actually one of our products. It's actually our 3-panel display. It's movable on wheels, all this kind of good stuff. But I spent a bunch of years being a marketing director and being frustrated in the trade show space. You go out there, you buy your vinyl, you buy your graphics, you set it up, and 15 minutes later it's obsolete and you got to buy new graphics, because your product changes or your company mission changes, or heaven forbid, you go to 7 shows in a year and it changes. Every show's different from a different market, kind of vertical, aerospace or automotive. They want to see something they're familiar with. So I worked for a while on it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, why don't I just scrap the vinyl and just make the booths out of TVs? So we actually have standardized products. We've got an 8-panel, 4-panel, and 3-panel designs. You stand it up, it all packs in a crate, and you ship it to your show. They stand up in about 15 minutes. You can run whatever content you want on it, from software simulations to video to websites to whatever kind of content a computer would run.
So you leasing these panels out, or are you selling them to the client, or both?
Both.
Both.
We've sold some. We've got clients down in Mississippi. We've got clients in Massachusetts, New York, Calgary, Ontario, or Calgary, Canada. Then we rent locally. So, for example, at the MDEC show that's coming up later this month, we actually have two setups there. One for the Ground Vehicle Systems Center, it used to be called TARDIC, down at the Arsenal. And then we also have one for Rosalie Technologies. So we're supporting them at the show.
Another Sterling Heights company.
Another Sterling Heights company.
Absolutely. You said earlier before we went on air, you're talking about putting some touchscreen panels
Yes.
onto LivePicture. Tell us how that might work.
Well, if you're looking at the display here, what we would do is we'd create, it's actually a little program written in HTML5 that would actually enable buttons on one of the screens. We want to keep the cost down. We don't want to have 4 panels that are all touchscreen. You need to control your content from one. So we'll put big buttons on here, and you'll be able to walk up and touch it and change the content across all the screens.
So last question for you.
Okay.
Being a resident in Sterling Heights, being involved as you are, having a company here, being in Velocity, what's the outlook, in your opinion, for Sterling Heights business over the next 5 years or so? Where do you think our big opportunities are?
I think that Sterling Heights, coming from such a manufacturing heavy background, I think that now you're seeing companies in Oakland County, Wayne County, seeing the value in Macomb County because they don't know about all this technology back end that a company like mine can bring to the manufacturing space or to the commercial space. We touch just about every market vertical you can, from defense to automotive to aerospace to, one of my customers makes fast attack boats for the Army. It's super cool. But they don't realize that companies like that reside in Sterling Heights because there's that kind of, you're manufacturing county.
Right.
And I think that's changing a lot. Yeah. And I'm hoping that between my company and then my associates that I'm bringing in here as well, we're going to change a lot of that and actually show the technology side of manufacturing.
Right. There's a tech-heavy component here, like you said, that's often glossed over.
Yep.
And I agree. There's a lot of opportunity to continue to expend that tech background here in Sterling Heights for more jobs and cooler technology.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks, Stephen, for your time.
All right.
I appreciate it. Some very cool stuff that you're working on, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Innovating Business is a production of Sterling Heights Television. If you'd like to find out helpful information about doing business in Sterling Heights, log on to sterling-heights.net and select the Economic Development tab.